This episode is brought to you by Amazon Business. We could all use more time. Amazon Business offers smart business buying solutions, so you can spend more time growing your business and less time doing the admin. I can see why they call it smart. Learn more at amazonbusiness.com.
Are you a forward thinker? Then you need an HR and finance platform that thinks like you do. Workday is the AI platform that helps propel your organization, your workforce, and your industry into the future. Workday, moving business forever forward.
This episode is presented by State Farm. Having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. It's like expecting the leadership of a team captain on the football field, but getting a sea captain. You wouldn't settle for just anything for your team. Shouldn't it be the same for your insurance? So don't settle for just any insurance when you can go with a leader. State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Haway The Podcast. It's Martin here, and you join us today for a Q&A pod. And of course, there is never a shortage of things to talk about at Sunderland, is there? We've had a ton of questions via social media and email, so thank you to everybody who sent them in for us to answer, and a whole host of things to get stuck into over the next hour or so. So to get us started, I will introduce you to the three chaps who are going to be sharing their words of wisdom, or possibly otherwise, with you today. So first up is Gav Henderson. How are you, Gav?
Good, mate. I know this goes out on a Tuesday, but we are recording this very early on a Monday, and considering the caffeine hasn't kicked in yet, I'm all right actually. Looking forward to it. New week, new game to build up to. Because as we've said repeatedly on here over the years, we bloody hate international breaks, don't we? There's nothing to talk about generally, other than little tidbits here and there. Obviously, the Stuart Harvey news last week, but it's not the same as building up to a game, is it? And I'm back in game mode. Wolves to come, so looking forward to this one.
No, it's going to be interesting next year, isn't it? Because I think they're going to put those two international breaks together to have a sort of international fortnight. And when I first heard that news, I was going, that's quite a good idea. But when you're in the middle of these international breaks, they seem to drag on for bloody ages, don't they? So I'm not too sure how I actually feel about it. Also joining us today is a founding member of the Patrick Van Aanholt fan club. It's Bomber.
Good morning, mate. Yeah, I was going to suggest that maybe not tagging me with or guaranteeing the listeners with words of wisdom from me, given the Patrick Van Aanholt backlash. But yeah, good to be here with you all once again.
Very good.
Can I just say as well, Bomber, it's notable that you've removed Van Aanholt from your screen name in the chat. I know the listeners can't see it, but last pod I was on where you had said Bomber Van Aanholt, you're trying to shake that tag, and we're just dragging you back in by bringing it up at every opportunity, I think.
I'm a man of the people, mate, and the people didn't want Patrick Van Aanholt, so he's gone. He's out of my life.
Sound like his disgraced cousin, Bomber Van Aanholt.
And that voice you heard there, of course, is Ant Waterson, who is winning a little bit of light upon the magic and let a few little secrets away. Because Ant, you're recording. It looks like you're recording from bed, mate.
I am. I'm sat up though. I'm not in bed. I'm dressed, which is good.
I think sat up's pushing it, and you're kind of on your side with a coat.
I'm on my side. My legs are on the floor, so I'm sat. I would say I'm in a sitting.
Half in, half out, eh?
Half in, half out. I'm dressed. I've got my socks on, got my trousers on, got my t-shirt on. The dogs
I'm glad you're dressed.
Yeah. Dogs are both here, keeping us warm. It's lovely. It's a lovely morning, mate. I'm good. To be fair, Mark, it's probably good you waking us up, because normally it's us waking you up for a podcast like 4 a.m. or something after we've drew 1-1 with Fleetwood or something. So it'd be good for you this afternoon, isn't it?
No, so I tell you, I keep saying the earlier you lads in England want to record in the morning, the better it is for me. I'm all for that. Right, we'll get stuck in the questions because we've had a ton of questions, as we said earlier. And the first one we're going to have a look at, and there's a few here about Noah Sadiki. Obviously, we had some injury concerns over Noah Sadiki. Seems like he's got a sprained ankle on international duty, and the reports this morning suggest it might not be too bad. I think he just missed out in the last game, but Warren Carter, who's at Warren Carter 09, He said if Sadiki was really injured, wouldn't he return to the club? It feels like, if anything, it's very minor and he's more touch and go to play. So I think that kind of maybe is reflective of the news that we've had this morning. Conor Bromley, formerly of this parish, he asks a question: how do you replace Noah Sadiki? And Roy of the Rokers, I love that username. He says, do we think that Dan Neil could play in the number 8 role and replace Sadiki rather than wait for a chance to cover Xhaka? Now, Gav, Dan Neil has obviously been on the periphery this season. He's had a few. I think he's had one game he's come on as a sub, and that's about
one
it. Maybe
sub appearance, yeah, I think.
So the question, Noah Sadiki, first of all, he's been pretty impressive so far this season. We've already lost Diarra. And even if Sadiki isn't too badly injured, and obviously we're keeping our fingers crossed he isn't, it looks likely you'll probably miss the game on Saturday. So first of all, Gav, how big a blow is that? How impressed have you been with Sadiki this season?
Oh, he's been, other than probably, I would say, Granit Xhaka and Wilson Isidore, he's probably been the most impressive player for me. And I could reel off a couple of others, but I think with Sadiki, when we signed him, I think a lot of us were kind of just expecting him to be maybe a periphery figure. I know it sounds daft saying that when you spend so much money on a player, but given his age, given his lack of experience, we were maybe looking at him and going, he'll be the kind of player you dip in and out maybe through the season, where it was pretty clear from minute 1 of pre-season when I first seen him that this is not a player who's came to mess about. I mean, won a league title, didn't he, in a cup with his team last year in Belgium. So obviously comes on the back of that experience. And I think more than anything, there's a couple of things here. There's more than anything, his enthusiasm has been infectious. Every time you see him on the pitch, every time you see him off the pitch, when you get to see the behind the scenes footage and the training footage and just the stuff on social media where it's the lads messing around and having the crack and stuff in the training ground. I think it's very clear he's a popular lad. He's bubbly. He's fit right in with the players that he's met up with at Sunderland, and on the pitch he's just been a Duracell bunny. He's everywhere on the pitch. I've never really seen a player like that, I don't think, at Sunderland, who just covers that amount of ground. I remember hearing comparisons to N'Golo Kante when he first signed, and I kind of laughed them off and thought, is that just because he's small? Is he central midfield player, is small? Is that why? But he genuinely plays like N'Golo Kante. He's got that similar style where he just covers every blade of grass. So looking ahead slightly, when we're talking about the injury that he's potentially got, and sprained ankle doesn't seem too serious, but that could be anything from he's going to be fit to play at the weekend to, could be out 2 or 3 weeks. We don't know. As we record this, he's not back in Sunderland. We haven't heard of any assessment done by the physios and stuff. So we can only assume he's a doubt for the weekend, a strong doubt, because I saw the videos, and I'm sure you lot did too, of him walking around the training pitch and coming out the team hotel with DR Congo, and he was limping pretty badly, I thought. We've all sprained our ankle. We know what that feels like. Sometimes you're all right within a day or two, aren't you? Sometimes it's worse than that. It depends if it's blown up like a balloon or not. So, I mean, he's going to be a massive, massive miss if we have to go any period without him. I don't think we've got another player like him. I think we've got other good central midfield players. You've Dan Neil, Chris Rigg, Luciel Getroida, who we know has played there a few times for us already this season off the bench. These are good players, but they're not the same kind of midfield player as Noah Sadiki. And I think those will be the things running through the head of Régis Le Bris right now, is I can't really replace what he does on the pitch. I can't go to Dan Neil, Chris Rigg, or Luciel Getroida and say, do what he does, because I just don't think it's in their makeup. But it doesn't mean we can't cope without him. I think we've still got strong players there, and I'm sure we're going to get on to maybe who might fit in and stuff. But he'll be a miss, won't he? I mean, this is the concern when you sign good players, isn't it? That when one of them gets injured, I mean, it's that feeling we got when Diarra's injury news came out, isn't it? The same thing. You just hear that and you're like, I just really don't want to do without him. He's such a good player. And it's the same with Noah Sadiki. I'm just glad it doesn't sound like it's particularly bad.
No, and that's the positive spin on it, I think, isn't it? Bomber, so is it as simple as Dan Neil would come in for Sadiki? as Roy of the Rokers suggests he might, or asks if he might?
I think it's one of two. It's either going to be Geertruida or Dan Neil. There is an argument that to be made for Dan Neil, and that he is kind of. I mean, he's never been the player that will do what Sadiki does, like Gav's mentioned. But in terms of not disrupting the dynamic of that midfield three, and the way in which the manager wants them to set up and the way he wants them to play, he would make sense to go in there. I think he probably deserves it. Not another chance, but a chance to kind of win his place back. Whereas, Geertruida seems to be a bit more of a versatile player where he can play in a number of different positions, and we seem to bring him on in whatever position we happen to need him in at the time. Dan Neil is that holding midfielder. So if he is out for a period of time, Sadiki, then it makes sense for him to come in. And I would probably, if he's not available, I would expect Dan Neil to come in. It does worry me a little bit if he is out. Maybe not so much the Wolves game, but if it's any longer than that, we spent so long in pre-season and the start of this season raving and praising to high heavens that midfield three of Xhaka, Diarra, and Sadiki, to all of a sudden have two of those out for any prolonged period of time. There is a danger that that run that we've been on, that cohesiveness that's become apparent in that midfield very, very quickly. 66% of it is missing, and it's one of the reasons for a lot of the good stuff that we've done so far this season. So it would be worrying. I will caveat that with we can't catastrophize about this and his potential injury. If he was quite severely injured, or it's going to be like a grade 3 tear or sprain or etc., he'd be in a boot, he'd be on crutches, he'd have been sent back to the club. It seems like it's one of those where it's not quite, he's not fit enough for the physicality of running around, putting in tackles, etc. But they're obviously not too concerned. So yeah, maybe we'll miss him for the Wolves game, and Dan Neil comes in, and then hopefully if he does, Dan Neil puts in a performance that we're not saying, I can't wait for Noah Sadiki to come back in.
No, that's right. And I want to come to you on this next bit, because there's been a few questions about the formation that we play linked to Sadiki's injury, right? And I think this question of whether we have a back five and how do we get Ballard in the team has kind of cropped up a bit more since the Villa game, when Ballard came in, went to 3 at the back after Ronaldo had been sent off. Obviously at Manchester United we did the same, and people are quite rightly kind of going now, well, if Sadiki's injured, is it actually a question of changing the formation rather than trying to get Dan Neil, Chris Rigg, or somebody else to replicate what Sadiki does? So Michael Edwards at MJE_88 says, if Sadiki is injured, do we change the way we play? Do we have to swap him for another central midfield, or would you play 5 at the back and let the wing backs do the running and closing down in wide areas? And Ben Kluge at Ben Kluge says, if Sadiki is injured, how about this as a lineup? And hold on, I've got this right in front of me because he's done his lineup. So Roofs in goal, Hume at right wing back, Mukiele, Ballard, and Alderete at centre backs, and Masuaku at left back. Traore on the right-hand side of the midfield, Xhaka and Enzo Lefebvre in the centre, Talby on the left-hand side, and Isidore up front. He says, let me get back to where we are at. So he says, if Sadiki's injured, how about that as the lineup? Lou at Lou_SAFC says, if Sadiki is long-term, who do you think fits in? Neil, Geertruida with Xhaka and Enzo Lefebvre in a 4-3-3, or do we shift to 5-4-1? And Joe Braun at Joe Braun 3, I think that one is, says, if Sadiki misses out, do we move to 3 at the back? My preference would be 3 at the back with Neil and Xhaka in the middle. Now, this 3 at the back or 5 at the back, however you want to describe it, and it interests me because we've never played it from the start. We've seen in a couple of games recently where we switched mid-game because of necessity. Villa because we went down to 10. Manchester United because we were getting ripped apart down the right-hand side, mostly. In pre-season, Régis Le Bris kind of ruled it out. He said, look, we've been practicing this way, training this way. We've bought players for this formation, so we don't really see it. But there seems to be this building sort of this building conversation, and people are really kind of hot on going three at the back, and you can understand it to an extent, can't you? Because you've got Gertrude, who hasn't started a game, who's come in, and Le Bris says he sees him as a centre half. You've got Ballard, who's looking brilliant every time he plays. Alderete has looked great when he's been playing. Mukiele played on that right wing back position on last Saturday in Man United and did really well. So, do you see us actually potentially coping with this this injury to Sadiki by changing the formation rather than just directly replacing him?
I think you can see the argument for it, but I probably wouldn't be doing it, especially, and again, no disrespect to Wolves, but especially against Wolves and all, we're at the bottom of the league, who haven't won a game all season. I don't think you'd go at a five at the back. I'd be very surprised. Had it been, a City or an Arsenal coming up, I would probably be looking at that argument, but it's not for me. If you're starting games with the formation that he's been doing, and he's been a stickler for it, to be fair, and I think he openly admitted he got it wrong against Manchester United, but that was probably more personnel than the system. I just can't see a change. When we've got players, I mean, it's not as if you're looking at like the likes of Dan Neil, if Dan Neil comes in, or Gertrude. These aren't like young'uns off the bench. That these are experienced footballers. I mean, Dan Neil's played over 100 games for us, so we know that Dan Neil can put a performance in, and I think he's warranted an opportunity to give a go in the Premier League. So for me, it's a no. It's a no from me, Mark. I can understand it. I think we need to get. I think the Dan Ballard situation will probably be at some point Dan Ballard will play centre half instead of one of the other two. But the other two have been absolutely outstanding together. You've also got to look at Alderete, who's away with Peruvian, isn't he? So he's going to be coming back quite late.
Paraguayan. Not
that's the one.
And you
began with a P anyway.
You began with a P. But he's going to be, coming back quite late. So there might be a thing where is he going to be, jet lagged or whatever on Saturday. So, but no, like I say, against Wolves at home, I'd be very, very disappointed if we're playing five at the back.
And Gav, on that, right? So you can look at five at the back as being a more defensive lineup, but I think it was Danny Collins said to me and Chris after the Forest game, you can kind of it can be three at the back, and it can actually be a more attacking system. And we've seen certainly Talby, we've seen him actually have a lot more joy playing in that wing back position, where he's a little bit more advanced in space to run into. Masuaku probably looks more suited to playing left wing back. Is there an argument in that case to say actually Wolves at home is the perfect game to try that formation out, rather than the game where there's maybe a bit more pressure to keep a clean sheet? Obviously it's a huge game. We'll come on to the Wolves game in more detail later on, because there's a few questions about that. But is there an argument to say it's a worthwhile thing to try out, given that we have got this situation potentially with Sadiki to cope with?
I'm not totally against it. I'm a little less against it than I probably was a fortnight or so ago, just because I taught myself around a little bit on that. I was all for it, and then I was thinking, actually, we worked on this system so hard, it's worked for us, and it's got us as far in the season with 11 points from 7 games. We've done brilliantly. But you do have to reflect on the personnel available. If Sadiki's going to be unavailable, we might be forced into change into something different. However, I will say that a lot of it has to come down to who we're playing. And I look at Wolves, they've got a big centre forward. I like the fact that Ballard would be on the pitch to deal with him. I like the fact that Ballard would be on the pitch to deal with any set players. But also, Wolves have got, they're not a great team. They're a decent team. But probably their strength is in midfield with the two Brazilian lads they've got in there, the Brazilian internationals. And I'm a little bit reluctant to take somebody out the midfield. So these are the headaches that Régis Le Bris will be having. The other one will be that he'll want to try and get two forwards on the pitch, I think, at some point. Brian Brobbey, and we've had stuff on the website this week about this. People are saying, let's get him in for the Wolves game. Wilson Isidor's had a great start. Elijah Mayenda had a real impact from the bench against Man United. And then on top of that, Arthur Masuaku hasn't looked great, we've got to say. And I don't know if I would be changing the system just to make him better at his job. I think I would probably rather just put somebody else in his position if we're considering changes. You know, I was talking about last week, maybe moving Trey Hume over to there to get Geertruida onto the pitch. But another option is getting Geertruida in the midfield. We've talked a lot there about Dan Neil playing, but I could easily see Geertruida just coming into midfield and playing alongside Xhaka. Shemsden Talby, as you mentioned, can play wing back. So I'm not against it, but I am skeptical that it's the right way to go from the start of a game. Wolves are decent. They've had I wouldn't say they've had an upturn in results, but they've improved in the last couple. And they're going to be coming to beat us because they know this is their chance to get 3 points. Likewise, they're rooted to the bottom of the table and we're the home team. So I'm not saying it has to be inherently defensive. I just think we've got to be very careful about how many changes we make, particularly since a lot of these players have been away on international duty. You're introducing a new system that they're not completely familiar with. You want as much time on the training pitch as you can have with the players to implement them ideas. And when you've got lads coming back Wednesday, Thursday, maybe some Friday, I don't know, that's going to be tough to just turn around and, with very little preparation time to say, right, we're completely changing the system we've used since July. So I think what you're more likely to see is just a very few changes. The system will stay the same. I think if we need to go to 5 at the back, you will do it, but it'll be later in the game. It'll not be from the start. And I would like to see Ballard get into the team somehow, but yeah, I'm still a little skeptical. I'm not against it. If he does it, I'll be able to see the reasons for it. But right now, I'm hoping he stays with the back 4.
Excellent. On that note, we will take a short break. We'll be back very soon.
Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the Dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
Welcome back to Haway The Podcast, and joining us for a Q&A session this fine Tuesday morning. And we are going to move on to a question from @TenchuLad from X. And there's a similar question from a username that's LD, then a load of random numbers, which I am not going to read out. But Bomber, this question is about Stuart Harvey. Now, I know, Gavin, and you did a pod about Stuart Harvey, so I'm going to leave you out of this one for the time being. But Bomber, TenchuLad says, with Stuart Harvey leaving, is this a club-driven or personal move? I.e., has the relationship been grown out of? Or I.e., have the outgrown relationship? This summer, our recruitment's become more global, not just UK and parts of France. Would you see this as natural growth or a strategic shift in our recruitment approach? And @LD, lots of random numbers, says, Stuart Harvey, is his departure an inevitable consequence of Ghisolfi's arrival, or a shift in recruitment strategy? How do you see that one? It was a surprise, wasn't it? He's been here for, 4 years? He seems to have been really influential. People speak very highly of him. He's done an incredibly good job and been part of the significant change that has been overseen at the club. So it did come as a surprise to see him leave. So how are you feeling about that one?
I mean, how I feel about it is a little bit indifferent, because what I don't know behind the scenes is, this summer in particular, it seems to be too much of a coincidence that Kasolfa's come in and then all of a sudden we've signed Xhaka, Sadiki, Diarra, all these players from the continent that we haven't really heard of, apart from Xhaka, obviously. So we don't know what his influence has been in on that. As a head of recruitment in the EFL and in the Championship, he's done absolutely brilliantly. So there is an argument to say that this is just natural progression. There is probably a little bit of personal pride for it as well, because I don't doubt that Stuart Harvey will have seen Gazolfi come in. They would have had talks about roles, responsibilities, how that might change now that we're a Premier League club, and he might be feeling a little bit pushed out. Like I said, it's all speculation, but the fact that it has come kind of out the blue and quite quickly makes me feel it's more of a personal decision than one that the club have kind of sat down and said, look, this is the direction that we're going in. I feel that if that was the case, those conversations would have happened in the summer, and he probably would have left in the summer or after the transfer window closed. He would have done help do the work that needed to be done to bring the players in the summer, and he would have been gone mid to end of August. So it does feel like maybe he's, as the season's gone on and they're talking about maybe January, or they're talking about what happens if we stay up, what happens if we go down next season, and maybe he's feeling a little bit pushed out of those conversations, or a little bit kind of second fiddle. Whereas, for the past 4 or 5 years, however long he's been here, it's very much been front and center of that. Not necessarily the decision making, because obviously Caroline Dreyfus and the likes will make those decisions ultimately, because they're the ones who hold the money. But in terms of making those recommendations and being relied upon, we probably aren't quite as reliant on. Well, not probably. The evidence suggests that we're not quite as reliant on him and his skill set and where his expertise and his knowledge lies. And he probably recognises that, and probably thinks it's time to move on for another opportunity where he can possibly go somewhere and be, head honcho again, rather than second fiddle to Gazolfi.
And Gar, I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because we talked in the summer when Gazolfi arrived, and wondered what it actually meant for people like Stuart Harvey, Christian Speakman even. Do you think this is a kind of the next chapter in what's going on at the football club, or is this just a kind of, say, as Mum says, kind of a natural thing that you've changed a little bit, things have evolved, and it's a time to move on?
Yeah, I was thinking on this a little bit after the pod had went out that we did the other day, because we briefly touched on it on there, but I was thinking about the idea that maybe Stuart Harvey's expertise aren't really required so much anymore. And that sounds a little unfair, but what I mean by that is when he came to the club, he came here with a wealth of experience from doing a similar job at Blackburn. So he'd been doing that in the Championship, and that maybe in League One as well. I'm not too sure. But his expertise really came in finding hidden gems and finding, untapped potential. And we still need to explore those markets, but we're operating at a completely different level in the Premier League now. And it's not a case of like, right, go out and get as a young player from Tottenham's academy, or a lad who was in Arsenal's academy and has lost his way a little bit in France or Belgium or something. It's changed a bit. We're now looking at players who are, going for upwards of 20 million. And that's not to say he does, if you can spot a player, you can spot a player. I'm sure he's very good at doing that. But it's more to do with how the whole market's changed. And at this level, it becomes about, everyone's aware of who these players are. It becomes about agents and Gazolfi's contacts, I guess, and that ability to negotiate around the table with some serious operators who are looking after these players, because these players are the most valuable ones in Europe. That's a marked difference to, with no disrespect, going out and getting Adjili, say Dennis Sirkin, Jay Matete. You know what I mean by that? Like, it's a very different operation that we are now. So I'm not saying Stuart Harvey couldn't do that job. All I'm saying is that I think the club's moved on a little bit. And maybe they've recognised that, and they've just said, look, this is like, this is just a natural parting of ways. His future may well be better off elsewhere. And I think it was when we were talking to James Copley about it, he mentioned a couple of times that he felt the next natural step for Stuart Harvey would be to go into sort of a director of football role somewhere and carry on what he's done at Sunderland, but as the man who oversees everything. And I can see that. I can see him going in at a championship club or maybe a big spending League One club where he gets that freedom to do what he's good at, and that maybe being what he does next. So I just think it's sad when somebody leaves because he's done such a great job, but he's went out on a high. He'll get himself a really, really good job somewhere else. I hope we don't miss him too much for Sunderland's sake. I hope it's a case of we're well stocked, we're well covered, we don't really need him. And that sounds, again, really harsh, but that's the reality of it. I think we've just got to, the wheels have got to keep turning. Like I said on the pod the other day, it's like a cog in a machine. As one is removed, you replace it with another, and things keep spinning. And that's the way it has to be at Sunderland. It doesn't matter who leaves. It could be Régis Le Bris, a really important player, the director of football, anybody. We've just got to hope that his presence won't be felt too much when now that he's not here. And yeah, obviously we wish him all the best in that, but it's just part of football, isn't it, that people leave?
No, it is. I think the only risk, I guess, from my perspective, is that if we don't stay up, and that's the big risk, isn't it? You're banking everything with this on us staying up, because if we don't, then Stuart Harvey's the perfect person to come in and find you some players. But we will keep our fingers crossed.
On that though, very quickly though, Martin, I think the mentality of the club isn't looking at. I know that we've got to be in. The reality is we might get relegated, but they're not thinking that way. And I also think as well, and this is something Bomber said, this is probably more of a personal choice from him, I think.
Yeah.
In that, from what I've heard, he's just kind of found himself as a less influential figure at the club. And for him, it's probably a case of, well, I've done my job at Sunderland, it's time to move on. And that's fair enough, isn't it?
Well, it is, and from his perspective as well, his stock's never going to be higher than it is currently with the job he's done over the past 4 years, isn't it? That leads us nicely into transfers. So Adam Miller at AKM301282, which I reckon's his date of birth, if I'm putting some numbers together correctly. And he asks, if we are in a solid position come January, do you think we could spend big again for a push towards the top half of the table? Are you expecting us to splash the cash again in January?
I think that the like whispers from like back behind the club is that we are going to be spending, aren't we? There's a couple of, I think there's a bit of money left to get a couple in, isn't there? So it wouldn't shock me. I would like, to be honest, looking at the squad, I wouldn't mind another winger coming in. I think that might happen. Obviously, we were rumoured with that Alderete, weren't we, from Italy, who failed the fitness test, failed the fitness test, didn't he? And I think that would have been a good signing because he's kind of hit the ground running this season, hasn't he? So that may be something that comes in. But yeah, I mean, I don't think they're done yet. I think in January, you're looking at, with injuries or suspensions or whatever, looking to fit in. Obviously, we've mentioned before with Masuaku hasn't exactly looked brilliant, so as a chance to get a left back in or something if Dennis Circum's not going to be here. So yeah, I think there'll be a couple in anyway, Martin, to be honest.
No, that's right. And I think Masuaku, because a couple of you have mentioned him now, I think I'm going to stick up for him a little bit because he's had.
I knew you were going to, as soon as the pen. I know you can't. Viewers can't see this, you know what I mean? But literally, every time Martin puts his pen in the air, you think Martin's going to say something.
No, I'm going to defend Masuaku a little bit because he's not had a great deal of pre-season. He came to the club pretty late. He's had two very tough games to come into, against Forest away and against Manchester United away. And he's looked short in fitness, and yes, don't get us wrong, he hasn't played brilliantly. But I think he's getting a little bit of a rough ride at the moment. I think the Wolves game on Saturday is a great game for him potentially, but we will come on to that in a little while.
I agree with you there, Martin. I do agree with you. I think I was saying it during the Man U game because people were piling in on him, and I'm thinking actually, he's been given zero protection from the man in front of him, and their two best players are doubling up on him.
Yeah.
But that's what concerns us. Is that they've seen an obvious weakness and have gone, let's pick at him. And I just hope that doesn't become a theme. If we play against Wolves at the weekend, are they just going to stick the two best players on Arthur Masuaku because they know he's our weak link? That's the worry I've got. If you put Hume out there or somebody else, I don't have that same concern, but I guess we'll see.
No, I think with the Man U one, it's interesting because I think we actually thought we can pin Ahmad back and get in behind them and release Adingra, which was where we'd actually sort of bet a little bit too hard on going forward on that left hand side rather than the threat if Ahmad and who was it, Muamba was coming over to the right hand side.
You got to think as well.
That's a new name. Mbuemo,
that's the one. Mbuemo was coming over the right side. I knew it was.
At least this mayor's not getting the stick for getting the names wrong. You've got to think as well with Masuaku. He probably came third choice, didn't he? Like, obviously we had Ronaldo, who obviously got suspended, being a complete another idiot. But then obviously you would have thought our second choice this season was Dennis Serkin. And then obviously he's got injured again, and he's obviously taking his time to come back. And he's kind of, as you said, he's been thrown into it. And I can see the signs haven't been great, but I think Saturday is probably going to be where you see him at his best, where he's probably got more of a license to bomb forward than what he's had. Obviously away to Forest and away to Manchester United. So, and I agree with what Gav said. He had absolutely no help whatsoever on Saturday gone against Manchester United, and I did feel a bit sorry for him there. And obviously that got changed when they made the formation change.
That's right. Back on transfers, Bomber. Rig 11X on X. Rig 11X on X. He says, what would be your ideal signings for the next transfer window? And I know Ant's given us a couple of positions there, but in terms of players, have you got any players in mind or positions in mind that we could strengthen?
Throwing that question to
Stuart Harvey.
Sat in mid-October, played 6 games, and you're asking me what we need for January.
Bomber, I'm not asking you. Chris 11X is asking you.
Okay, Chris. Well,
sorry, Rig 11X. Rig 11X.
Okay, you're assuming it's Chris Rigg that's asked the question, just to see if he's going to fall further down the pecking order in the midfield.
If this twat wants some more midfielders, I'm not going to listen to him.
I mean, I really don't know, to be honest, is the honest answer. It's not much of an answer. As things stand here, we've got 3 left backs, we've got enough centre backs, we've got enough right backs. It's difficult to say who and where we need to strengthen. I mean, somebody could make an argument for another striker or another wide player, but then you look at the numbers, just in terms of the numbers that we've brought in and the numbers that were there already. We've got 3 strikers, and we've got other people who can play in those wider and forward areas. I think maybe someone on the left hand side. Adingra's had a pretty decent start. Talby's been over there once or twice. Obviously we got Traore, because this is the thing. I could name a position, but then I could also name 6 people who can play in that position, whether it's their specialist position or not. So unfortunately, it's a bit of a cop-out and a bit of a fence sit from me on that one, Mark, because I really don't know where we would need to strengthen. A lot of it would depend on, come Christmas time, who's out on the injury table, and for what period of time. Because, if it was right now, I'd be saying we probably need to bring in another centre midfielder. If Sadiki's out for a period of time and Diarra's out for a period of time, and we're suggesting, or we're not suggesting, but there is a suggestion that, Dan Neil's not necessarily favoured, and we're pledging to spend money. We might bring in another centre midfielder, but as things stand right now, I'm happy with the squad as it is, and I can't really think, certainly not from a starting position. Maybe we might need someone from somewhere for a bit of squad depth. But in terms of a starting 11, or let's say a 14, a traditional 14 of 11 and 3 kind of who are just there, and not quite there in the starting 11, but could make a starting 11. I don't see a glaring gap that we need to plug. I mean, obviously, if something, if I know we were able to bring in an absolute world-class player who's going to be better than Wilson Isidore, Brian Brobbey, and Elijah Mayenda, then of course we'll go for them and try and bring them in. You know, a Xhaka gravitas type signing in another position, we'll bring them in. But I'm not suggesting that we need somebody in those positions. So yeah, I don't know if anybody else feels any different on that, but I think we're pretty much sorted, which isn't very exciting, I know.
Well, one of the players, Gav, who we've been linked to all summer, and the transfer talk around him kind of continues as the season progresses, is John Lusumi. And Sam Duffin emailed us. And of course, this is the questions that we get in aren't just confined to social media. So if you do want to email us in with questions, just do so at rokerreport@yahoo.co.uk. But Sam Duffin says...
Yahoo?
Yahoo. rokerreport@yahoo.co.uk. But Sam Duffin asks, with Sunderland continuing to be linked with a move for John Lusumi in January, would you rather see us spend 30 million roughly on him, or take a bit more of a punt for 10 million on a player similar in profile to Mukiele and Alderete? How are you seeing that one now? Because we chased him all summer, and it was really sort of looking like we'd get him, and he was our number one defensive target. But you look at the players that we brought in. You know, we've talked earlier about Gatrell, who sat on the bench and not able to get into the team. You know, we've got a wealth of options on the bench and around the squad in those defensive positions, and in defence is where we've been really strong. And I do apologise if somebody heard something interesting from Ants Line. I'm not sure what that was, but we will.
It's the dog. It's the dog.
Aye, of course.
Almost having a heart attack laughing here. Anyways, John Lusumi, Martin.
John Lusumi, and Ants talk. No, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because we continue to be linked with them. There's talk in Bologna of them trying to get him to agree a new contract. His contract's up in June 2027, I believe. But the amount of money apparently that's on the table from us, Bologna can't meet. So he's rejected new contract, all that sort of stuff. I'm not sure his form's been particularly good. But do you think the club are as hot on him now as it might have been in the summer?
Ooh, I see, because when we were thinking back in the summer, I don't know whether, when I say we, I'm talking about us as fans, I don't know whether we necessarily thought Mukiele would be such a hit as a centre-half. I thought he was probably coming in as a right-back. I don't know. And then he's gone on and had like a really good run of games there at the back with Alderete, and all of a sudden the requirements slightly changed, hasn't it? But I think we've got to be open-minded. If there are good players available that are attainable, we should be open-minded about signing them. And I'm not saying we need to flood the squad, but you think about beyond Alderete, we don't have really a left-back or left-sided centre-half, sorry. We've got players who are right-footed who can play there, but we haven't got much of an option there. You know, the players in backup are Luke O'Nien or Adjialise. You know what I mean? Like, we're getting down to players who we probably suspect aren't going to play much this season. And I think the club will be very aware of that. And if they can bring somebody in who's as good as the lads we've already brought in this season, they will. I don't think it'll be 30 million quid though. I know that basically didn't come here because eventually the fee couldn't be agreed. Bologna wanted more than we were prepared to pay. But when you get to January, I actually think they're going to be a little bit less reluctant to lose him. And I think it might not take quite as much money given that he's out of contract this summer. If they can get a modest fee for him and sign a replacement, I think they'll probably let him go. And I don't know how they're doing in Serie A at the minute, but his importance to them might have lessened given the start of the season they've had. I don't know. There's a long time between now and January, obviously. But you've got to think about how much the club really wanted him, and we didn't give up. That saga went on for absolutely ages, didn't it? It went right down to the wire. I think it was only in the sort of last half a day of the transfer window that it became pretty clear we weren't going to sign him. So the club really wanted to sign him, and I don't imagine that that's lessened in that time. So I'm still keen. Look, I actually think as well it would be nice if we could pay that off, if we could somehow get him to the club after chasing him for so long, because he's clearly a good player. The other thing I'd want to chuck in there as well, by the way, is that we won't be the only team looking at him if he is as good as we suspect he is, particularly with his contract running down. That's going to open him up to a lot more clubs, I think, than just Sunderland. But you've just got to hope that, given how much we wanted him, with the discussions we'll have already had with these representatives, the fact we kept going back, the fact we were keen, might work in Sunderland's favour. So, long way to say a very short answer, but I would definitely like to see us go back in for him and bring him in January and keep strengthening the squad.
The only thing I would say with that, Gav, just to caveat that. So whilst you're talking, I had a look. So Bologna are currently 7th in La Liga. They're only 3 points outside the Champions League places. Like you said,
In La Liga, they're in Spain.
In Syria.
They've moved.
we need to just record this early every day because we're coming up with some.
It's a lot
you've
more
got no excuse, Martin. It's a bit later in the day for you, but for us three, holy moly!
So anyway,
Man's got no excuse.
There's 7th in Serie A. Right, they're 3 points from the Champions League places. They're only 5 points off the top. I know you said it's early days. They're also in the Europa League, remember? So I think come January, if they're still in the Europa League and they're still in that kind of top 7-8 places, I'm not so sure that they'll be willing to let him go for a cut price. I think they might resign themselves to losing him for nothing, in place of, a top 5 finish or a top 4 finish in Serie A, and progressing into the latter stages of the Europa League. They've not done too badly in that. I know they lost to Villa most recently. So I think a lot of that does depend on, will have an impact on our ability or anybody's ability to sign him in January.
Very good. Sticking on the topic of transfers, and Elliot on X, at Elliot, lots of random numbers, says, when AFCON comes around and Neil and Serkin still haven't signed new contracts, do you think we should sell them both for 5 million each if we can, and then just reinvest the money right at the start of the January window in a midfielder, because Gertruda's capable at left back? So there's a few bits in that, isn't there? I think the Neil and Serkin contract thing still continues to bubble along. Serkin's back in training this week. We've seen pictures of him out on the training field. Dan Neil's potentially got a way back into the team with Sadiki's injury. So how do you see that one playing out, I guess, is the point? 'Cause I don't think we actually need to sell to then reinvest in January. I don't think there's a need to flog them both for whatever we can get, which would enable us to invest right bang on the 1st of January. But I guess the question really is, do you see them playing a part, sticking around, or do you see us cashing in on them?
I certainly don't think it'll happen at the start of January. I think the lads kind of answered his question there. The AFCON's at the beginning of January, where we're going to need every single member of the squad, because we've got that many who are gone. We're going to need a Dan Neil. We're probably going to need a Dennis Serkin. So no chance for the start. I think at the end, if like the last day of the transfer window, if we haven't signed new deals, I think they probably will look to get some money in, but they certainly don't need to reinvest that money, because we've already mentioned earlier on that there's money to spend in January anyway, so it wouldn't make sense to me whatsoever to get rid of 2 players when we've already got 6 or 7 players at the AFCON. I think Dan Neil will probably be playing quite a lot over that period, and Dennis Serkin, we'll see what happens with him. It probably will be playing left back the way it is. So I think long term, I don't think they'll sign new deals. So I think they probably will be gone in January. I would like them both to. I've got to be honest. I like Dan Neil. I really like Dennis Serkin. Dennis Serkin's a cracker left back, but it's up to them. If they don't want to sign, more fill them, to be honest, because I don't think we'll get bigger clubs than us. But it is what it is, isn't it?
No, I agree. I think Serkin and Dan Neil could potentially be first team regulars for us again in a season or 2 down the line. And the ironic thing with that question, if we want to cash in on them, we're better off cashing in on them after they played 3 or 4 weeks in the Premier League through the AFCON when we needed them. And then at the end of January, they've proven that they can play in the Premier League. They've proven that the match fit, all that sort of stuff. We've got a far better chance of cashing in on them. But that leads nicely into Just one more question about sort of general team selection. I'm talking about Dan Serkin and Dan Neil, because Gaz Fisher at Gaz J. Fisher says, out of the remaining lads from last season, who do you think has a realistic chance of becoming a regular, or becoming a starting 11 regular, rather, if any? I'm talking about Pato, Serkin, O'Nien, Neil, Mundle, and Rig.
I would probably say right now Remain Mundle, because I don't think Régis Le Bris is completely settled on who his best option is down that side. I think Enzo Lefebvre and Simon Adingra have kind of shared that position. I like Enzo Lefebvre there, but I think he's just a player you slot in wherever you need him. Adingra is a bit more streaky, and I think he's got quality, but as we saw in the Man United game, he can be a hindrance if he's not working hard defensively. Whereas with Mundle, I think he's got everything. The only thing holding Remain Mundle back is his fitness, to be honest, because there was times last season where I came away and I was like, he is so ready for the Premier League in terms of his ability. Physically, you even look at him, for a winger, he's a big boy. Big lad, he's quick, he's athletic, he's got goals, he's got pace, he's got, I'm not getting too carried away here, but I watched Semenyo at Bournemouth and his journey to where he is now. Like, people are talking about Antoine Semenyo as a potential Arsenal signing coming up, because he's really become an important player at Bournemouth. And I just look at Remain Mundle and I think if he could have 2 or 3 seasons playing for Sunderland in the Premier League, he'd be getting talked about in the same breath, because he's got everything, but it's just his injury issues that are holding him back. But if he can get fit soon, which it looks like he's not going to be too far off over the next month or so, if we can get him back involved and then he can start showing the kind of ability we saw last season, it wouldn't be inconceivable that come sort of December, January time when the AFCON starts, that Remain Mundle's our first choice left winger. And by that point, then it's just a case of, you've got the ability to show what you can do now. Crack on. I think if I was going to keep anyone else in the conversation, it would probably be Rig, just because Rig's already started games this season. We know Diarra's going to be out for a while. I hope it doesn't happen. But if he then goes off to the Cup of Nations with Senegal after being out as long as he has, then that basically gives Chris Rig a free run at that position till, January. Say a free run, there's going to be games where Neil comes in, there's going to be games where Geertruida comes in. But I think given that Rig was the first person they went to after Diarra's injury, it's pretty clear who they say is a priority in terms of them options. And I think Chris Rig, he signed a new deal. He's still only very young, and the club aren't thick, and they know that if they give him chances, his value will increase and he will become a spotlighted player in the squad. Whereas with Neil, we've already talked about, the contract situation there, and Geertruida's on loan. So yeah, it'll probably be Mundle and Rig. Serkin's an interesting one for me, because similarly to Mundle, I actually think that when he's fit, he's right up there as well. He was probably, when he got that really good run of games last season, he was probably the best left back in the Championship, I thought. He's got a bit of everything, Serkin, and whereas, you worry about Masuaku's defensive ability. I think Serkin's more of an all-rounder like Ronaldo. And again, AFCON coming up, they're both going to be playing for their countries. Serkin's going to get at least a handful of games to play left back if he's fit. And, as much as I think Ronaldo's a cracking player, he's already shown that he's got a bit of a hot streak in him, and he can fly off the handle, and that's going to make Serkin's life a lot easier if he keeps giving him chances to come into the team. So there's a few there, isn't there? But chiefly, it's got to be Remain Mundle. And I'm praying that's the case, Martin. I'm praying Mundle gets a chance and takes it, because it's just frustrating, isn't it, when you can see someone's talent and they just can't stay fit. We've seen it with Elise and Serkin too. They're all brilliant players. They're all potential Premier League footballers, but if you can't stay fit, you're just going to end up you're going to end up out the picture, because the club can go and sign a left winger in January that'll replace Remain Mundle, and likewise Serkin, as they've done, brought in two fullbacks to replace him already. So yeah, I'm hoping it's Mundle.
And it's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because you could argue that the reason that certainly Serkin and potentially Mundle as well, and a few others, the reason that they're at the club is because they've had these injury problems in the past and because they haven't been able to get fully fit for consistent periods of time. But, we've talked all summer about how ruthless the club's been and, how focused they are about achieving excellence and moving up and progressing the club and all that sort of stuff. So the big question is, for me, whether they'll actually wait for people like Mundell, Serkin, and other players who've got dodgy injury records if they can't get themselves really fully fit very quickly. And the other aspect with Mundell, which I think people have kind of forgotten with his injury, is a couple of days before he got injured, there was all sorts of rumours he was going elsewhere, wasn't there? There was rumours that he was off and leaving and he'd go into a club was in Holland or Belgium, I can't remember which one it was, but it was somewhere like that. So there was all this transfer talk that he was unsettled. It might have been PSV. But there's all this talk that he was unsettled and wanted to move, and then he got injured. So I think that's another interesting one to watch to see how that progresses. We will take a very short break at this point, and we'll be back with you very soon.
No one should have to choose between their own safety and their pets. But nearly half of domestic abuse survivors delay leaving because they can't bring their pets with them. Purina is helping to create more pet-friendly domestic violence shelters through the Purple Leash Project, so survivors and their pets can escape and heal together. Visit Purina.com/purple to learn more.
Big news. Sephora is now on Uber Eats. So if you find yourself facing a beauty emergency, like needing a last-minute gift, or you're just out of your favorite mascara, again, don't panic. We got you. Order now and get $10 off on Sephora orders of $50 or more on the Uber Eats app. Order now. Offer ends October 30th. One order per customer. Additional terms apply. See app for availability. Delivery fees may apply.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to Haway The Podcast, and we are in the middle of a Q&A pod, and we are getting down the nitty-gritty now because we have got a load of questions about Saturday's upcoming game with Wolves. Now, Bomber Mackenbauer at Nathan Gunn 13 says, despite our good start, does Wolves at home still feel like a must-win game to keep that momentum? Anything less would bring pressure going into such a tough run and AFCON. Now, I will stake my claim here that a must-win game cannot happen in October, but apart from that, how important is this game coming up against Wolves?
Well, I'm going to be cliche again, Mark. I think every game is a must-win game. When you're a newly promoted side and 6 of the last 6 promoted teams have been relegated, I don't think you have the luxury of not having must-win games, to be perfectly honest. I think given the start that we've had, and given where Wolves are currently with 2 points and 2 goals or 3 goals, whatever it is, and a home fixture, I think people will be looking at it as a game that we could and possibly should win. But I'm of the opinion that every game should be treated as a must-win until you get to like the 40-point mark, that magic 40-point mark or whatever it is. The last few seasons, every game is a must-win, and even going to Old Trafford last week. Not last week, week before. That should be treated as a game. Okay, yeah, we must try and win this or try and get something from it. I think I'm not sure I agree that it would potentially that anything other than a win is a potential momentum stopper. A lot of it will depend on who's fit, who's available, because there will be caveats that if we end up with a 1-1 draw without Diarra and Sadiki and a couple of others, then actually, on reflection, it might not necessarily be a bad point. But, a home game against bottom of the league, objectively, you should be looking at trying to win. So, yeah, from my point of view, it could be anybody at home and it's a must-win game. To stay up in the Premier League, your home games are your fortresses, and you need to be taking as many 3 points from that, regardless of who you're playing. So yeah, it's a short and sweet answer for me because for me they're all must win.
I will pick you up on this, right? Because literally they're not must win. They must try to win.
Mathematically,
It would be nice to win, but they're not a must win. Come on.
I think the attitude should be for every game that it's one that you must win. I do take your point.
You must try to win.
Yeah, okay.
Nothing bad's going to happen if
I'll
we get
accept that
beat on
compromise.
Saturday.
That's fine.
But
Yeah.
look, I think that the point is, right, that this Wolves game on Saturday, it's a great opportunity, on paper at least, it's a great opportunity to get 3 points. After Wolves, we've got Chelsea away, Everton at home, Arsenal at home, Fulham away, Bournemouth at home, Liverpool away, Man City away, and the Mags at home. So, you're going into a tough run of fixtures there. So, it's a great opportunity to get 3 points on paper at least. But as Gav said earlier, Wolves will be looking at the game on Saturday going, that's a great chance for us to get 3 points as well. And it's going to be interesting and to see how we approach the game. Steve Richards at Stitcho Steve says, do we go all-out attack or hold the defensive line against Wolves? Do you see much change in how we approach the game, or do you think it'll be business as usual for Régis Le Bris?
Business as usual, to be fair. I think it'll be, and I agree with you, by the way. I don't think it's must not win. Whatever it is, must win.
Must not win. There's not been many of them.
I think it's one of them ones where it's a must not lose. I kind of like, I'd be happy enough with a point because it keeps us that gap away from Wolverhampton Wanderers, you know what I mean, and who are down there. I'd be more than happy with that. I know, like, kind of, I'll probably get a lot of stick for that, like, we should be beating Wolves at home and all that stuff. But you remember that, it's still, Wolves have got to beat somebody this season. You know what I mean? Wolves aren't going to go the whole of the season without winning. So they've got to beat something. They'll be looking at this one. They'll be looking at thinking this is must win for them. You know what I mean? Because it pulls us back towards them if they beat us. But for me, with our home form, I think as long as we stick to what we've been doing, if we keep it tight at the back, which we have been, I think we've been doing it brilliantly at home. We've got the players who can counter attack and give us some good chances. Wilson Isidore's been on fire at the senior light. I see it no different than like the West Hams or the Brentfords, where we do soak up a little bit of pressure, but then we've got that the way we play really well is when we get players forward quickly, and I think that's just going to be, for me, it's just going to be exactly the same. It's why when we asked the question before about formation changes, where I wouldn't do it, because I think I'd rather just bring a player in to replace a player in the middle of midfield than change the formation and moving 3 or 4 players around. So I can just see it being, like I said, hopefully another home win. And fingers crossed. I think if we play how we have been playing this season, I think we will win. I think we will win quite comfortably because I think we're a good side. But yeah, I think it's too early to be thinking about we need to win this game, we need to win that game. But this is probably the one of the ones where we looked at the start of the season. Wolves at home is probably a one-way thinking that's the 3 points. And if we can pick up anything at Chelsea or whatever, then that'll be a bonus.
And Gav, that defensive side of the team on Saturday, we've talked a little bit about it earlier, but we've got a few questions about how we might line up in defence or who might play. So Joe Lewins on X said, should we move Hume to left back against Wolves, bringing in Ballard and moving Mukiele to right back? Also, if Sadiki is injured, would you replace with Rig or Getrauda? I think we've kind of covered the second bit with Sadiki, but the makeup of that defence is going to be an interesting one to look at on Saturday. Dan W at Dan Wright says, do you think we should play Hume at left back with Getrauda playing right back or the same defence? And Michael Dunn at Dunny, lots of random numbers, says, how does Régis Le Bris get Ballard into the side? He's not going to play a back 3 at home to Wolves. So there we've got that from Michael. He's not going to play a back 3 at home to Wolves. But do you see Talby as more of a left winger driving at his fullback? He's played his best stuff there, and he would offer better protection for Masuaku. So how do you think we'll line up in defence if we all kind of agree that we're going to go back 4, which I think we generally are? What's that 4 look like?
It's so like if today, as I sit here, what I would like to see is probably Hume at left back, and he's just been on international duty playing left of a 3. You know what I mean? So he can do it. And we've seen him there, and I think he's fine there. So I would like to see Hume left back. I would like to then bring in Ballard alongside Alderete and then Mukiele at right back. I know that's a lot of change, but I think in terms of the shape of the team, it makes a lot of sense. Mukiele, when he went to the right at Old Trafford, I thought looked really good. He's more of an attacking threat than Hume is. I think that's one aspect where I think Hume's maybe struggled since stepping up. I think he's been zero threat, to be honest, going forward. Whereas in the Championship, he was providing a lot of width, and he was getting in behind defences in the Championship to put balls in the box. We just haven't seen that from Trey Hume yet. Whereas with Noah Mukiele, then he's very quick. He's got a lot of strength. He can get down that side, and also means we don't have to drag him from centre half to take throw-ins all the time. He can stay in a full-back position when we need him to take a throw-in. And I mentioned before about Strand Larsen, and I'm not going to try and pronounce the guy's name, but they signed like a 6'8" striker in the summer.
Give it a go, Gav. Come on.
Tolo Arakondari. Arakondari?
Sounds
close enough.
Sounds plausible.
Yeah. He's about 6'8". So both of their centre forwards are big lads, and I just think we saw that with Ballard coming on at Old Trafford. Sesko went from battering us to he didn't have a sniff after Ballard came on, and Sesko's a big lad. So I just think we've got to kind of weigh that up. And also, by the way, we look at our best when we're putting balls in the box. And the best player we've got, as I keep repeating, is Ballard for attacking the ball. So it gets Ballard into the team. It doesn't unsettle the defence that much. I don't think putting Hume left back and Mukiele right back is massively unsettling. I think that's fine. I think as a unit, that four have all worked together in various systems and look good. It gets Masuaku out of the team, which I know we were sticking him from a bit before, but I'm just more confident with somebody else there at the minute. And Andy's been away on international duty as well and played a lot of football, travelling and all the other stuff. I just think it makes more sense to push Hume out there, because both of Hume's games for Northern Ireland have been in Northern Ireland, I think. And I don't know what you lads think. I just think that's a pretty solid defence. That makes a lot of sense. We don't want to be moving people around all the time. You've got to consider for the next game, we're going to have Ronaldo back. But rather than try a back three, I think we can go with a back four and still see some benefit from having Ballard on the pitch, and it doesn't massively change things. And I would like to think that's something that maybe Régis Le Bris is considering, because I think he would love to get Ballard on the pitch too. He does it at every opportunity. Whenever we've had to make a change early in games, it's been Dan Ballard coming on. He wants him on the pitch, and you've got to say Ballard has not played badly at all. He's had a good game every time he's been on the pitch this season. So that would be my go-to. I think, yeah, Hume, Alderete, Ballard, Mukiele.
And it's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of our attacking play at home this season's gone down the left-hand side. And, we've seen that combination of, Ronaldo bombing forward, Enzo Lefebvre kind of pushing around, Sadiki dropping in, and kind of that little triangle's worked really well. And if we are without two of those, obviously we'll be without Ronaldo, but you'd argue Masuaku is going to be better suited to doing that sort of attacking role than he potentially has been away from home. The other aspect to this, which I actually think we'll go with that 4 on Saturday with Hume at left back. And one of the reasons is I actually think Régis Le Bris wants to get Mukiele at right back and Ballard in the side, and either Alderete or Gertruida in the centre. He's talked about how he sees Gertruida as a central defender. I thought it was quite strange actually when he's asked about Hume a couple of weeks ago. He'd said that Trey Hume's kind of in the team because we didn't strengthen right back early enough in the process, and he was in possession of the shirt. He was there. The other players arrived late, so he was in possession of the shirt now, and he's taking his chance. But he kind of talked it down as if it was almost luck that Hume was in the side because we hadn't signed players early enough. Mukiele and Gertruida arrived pretty late in the day. So I think ultimately we'll see Mukiele play right back. And where that kind of leaves Hume and who plays in the centre is another question altogether. But coming back to this, the starting lineup bomber for Wolves, looking at the other end of the pitch, Billy at Billy Blythe asks, is it time to start Brobbey?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? Because I'm sure Wilson Isidore will have something to say about that. I mean, we've signed him we made a song and dance about signing him. We chased him for a little while, but then we'd almost kind of not forgotten about Isidore, but kind of just assumed he would be second choice. Well, at the time, at the start of the season, he was third choice behind Mayenda, if we're being honest, such was Mayenda's end to the season. But, you know, he's for whatever reason has gone into the side, and he's scoring goals, and that's what you want from your strikers. And I'm sure Brian Brobbey will be the first person to say, well, you know, if I'm a striker and I'm scoring goals, why should I expect to be out the team? The only way I can see him going in is if we change our formation and do try with a two up top. But I agree with what everyone else is saying here. I don't think he will change the formation, not for a home game where there's been not really enough time to prepare to play a new system or a new formation, with everybody going off all over the world to go and play for their respective countries. So I think that certainly that centre forward line will be Wilson Isidore, and we'll see Brobbey and Mayenda on the bench again. It's just circumstance. It's almost like the reverse of what you were saying about Trey Hume. You know, Trey Hume was in there, and has performed really, really well, and so has kept his shirt when people, including the management, possibly didn't expect them to. I'm sure that's the same situation at the pit with Isidore, is that, you know, he wasn't expected to be our number one striker for the start of the season. However, he's scoring goals, and he's the only one of the forward players who is doing so. So why should he come out? And it is unfortunate for Brobbey, but he will get his chance. You know, Wilson Isidore isn't going to play 38 Premier League games this season. He just has to be patient. I'd love to see him start a game and get a run of games, because I was quite excited when we signed him. You know, and for the few cameos that he's had so far, he's looked a bit of a handful without necessarily being a massive threat. But he will get his chance. He just needs to be patient. I don't think that's going to come whilst Isidore is on some home scoring streak. I just can't see it happening. It feels like cutting your nose off to spite your face.
We'll just note as well, by the way, the last two games Wolves have played, they've conceded late goals. And that, when you think about our home form this season, that's been a bit of a feature of our play, hasn't it? Particularly Wilson Isidore, he's been scoring late goals against whoever. So I'm sure that won't have escaped Régis Le Bris' thinking, and the game plan will be really interesting. I actually think we'll do something we're pretty comfortable at doing, which is we'll go out there to be a bit more solid and resolute, and we'll be very mindful of the fact that Wolves have shown vulnerability late in games, and we'll probably go more attacking the later the game goes on, and that might mean Isidore doesn't start the game. So it'll be interesting to see who he does pick. I will say on Brobbey, though, I think this is about as good an opportunity as you're going to get to start him when you look at what we've got to play coming up, because we've got some really, really tough games over the sort of next month or so, and a home game against the team who are bottom of the league is a really good opportunity to get him on the pitch and just see what he can do. And Wolves aren't particularly strong at the back, so it might be an opportunity for him just to bully a couple of defenders for an hour or so and then bring on someone like Mayenda or Isidore. I wouldn't be against that at all, actually. I'm actually really keen to see him. I think there's been a bit of unfair stick, not a lot of it, but a little bit of unfair stick from it, and there's been a sort of swell of support as a result of that from people like us who just, you know, are generally quite supportive of the players, and as you would be. And I think that might. I'm keen to see how that impacted on him, because I would imagine if he's been sort of even half aware of the sort of talk about him on social media, he'll want to prove people wrong, and two, he'll want to prove people right, like us, who just want to see him do really well for Sunderland. So I think this is a cracking chance to play him. If I'm honest, you know, you look at the who we got next after that, Chelsea away. Well, you know, that's going to be backs to the wall. Everton, Arsenal. It's like, I want to see him on the pitch. It's now mid-October. We signed him in August. Let's get him on the pitch.
Yeah, I actually think he'll start. I think it's a perfect game to give him a run out and see what he can do, because as you say, if you don't start them against Wolves, when you're gonna start them, you look at the run of fixtures, and that run of fixtures, Ant, Wolves at home, Chelsea away, Everton at home, Arsenal at home, 4 games before the next international break. We've got a good opportunity to pick up some points, but Matty Oliver _ says, how many points shall we be realistically looking to gain from that next set of fixtures before the international break? So you've got 4 games there, 3 at home. How many points do you think we should be aiming for? According to Bomber, they're all must wins. So, yeah.
I was going to say Bomber would say 12. Between 5 and 7, I think. I think we'll, to be honest, I say this, I think we'll live to Chelsea away, but Chelsea can be anything, can't they, this season? They've actually proven that they've been like really good at in some games, like and then really poor in other games. So, and I think he's under pressure, isn't he, Maresca? So I can actually see us getting something down at Chelsea, which is weird enough to say. I think obviously the Wolves game, you're looking at the 4.
Can I just say, sorry, before you move on from that, and they've got a Champions League game a couple of days before the playoffs.
Yeah.
So that's something else to note.
Yeah, and like I say, that without Cole Palmer, aren't they? So, he's obviously what makes them tick. So I can see us possibly getting a draw down there. Then I'm looking at beating Wolves at home, and I'd be disappointed if we didn't get anything off Everton. I think Arsenal are a cracking side. I think Arsenal win the league this season, to be honest. I think they were a really, really good side. So, if we can get a draw, I'd be absolutely over the moon. But I think realistically, between 5 and 7 there, 2 wins and a draw would be ideal. Just to kind of have a slight opinion on the Brobbey situation, I think what we're forgetting is we can always move Wilson out to left wing, where we signed him for to begin with, like last year. And when he played in the cup game, he played out there, didn't he, in the second half? And I thought he was excellent until he came off. So that's always like a thing. And obviously, Adringa hasn't exactly hit the ground running this season for us yet. Is it a possibility Wilson goes there and Brobbey goes up there? Because I agree with what Gav was saying. At some point, you are going to have to press the button on him and make him play, because it's probably out of the 4 games there the ideal situation to put him in. So it's a funny one with him, but he'll be all right, Brobbey. I think he'd soon be scoring for us, and all this crap that he's been getting last week will soon be forgotten about.
It's an interesting one with Isdo, actually. I was thinking that when you were talking about Hume playing left back, because having a more defensive left back gives you the option potentially of playing somebody like Wilson on the left-hand side to free a centre-forward position up for Brobbey. But going back to that run of fixtures for Matty's question, Gav, how many points do you think we'll get in those little run of fixtures before the next international break?
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because obviously oh, well, I'm a little bit concerned that Wolves have got better over the last. I know they did concede late, but they nearly beat. Was it Spurs the last game?
Spurs, it was last minute, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then Brighton wasn't Brighton.
Spurs.
So they had Brighton at home. Spurs away, sorry, and then Spurs scored in the last minute. And then Brighton at home. And Van Hecker scored with like 5 minutes to go, didn't he?
Yeah. So I'm a little bit concerned that they've improved, but we should also take heart from the fact that they've shown a bit of weakness there late in games. But they're going to be looking at this and they'll be really up for coming to Sunderland. They've got to be, because this is their big chance. When you look, they've got a little run coming up where they've got us, they've got Burnley, they've got Fulham, and then they play Chelsea. So that their next 3 games, they're going to be looking at that and going, we can get points here, so they're going to be up for it. But for me, I think given what I've already seen from Sunderland at the Stadium like this season, I think we'll beat them, because I think we've almost made the Stadium like a really difficult place to come and play, and this is going to have a big sense of occasion about it again. Every game's been an occasion for its own reason. Obviously, West Ham, the return to the Premier League, After that, then we went on and played Brentford, and there was a big song and dance made about that game. And then Villa, we had the backs to the wall performance with 10 men. This one, you've got the whole Kiel Crossings opening. There's going to be loads of people enjoying themselves in the town before the game. Again, it's a sense of occasion, right? Hopefully people will have had a few extra beers and be up for it and loud in the ground. And that's been a real feature of the home games. It's just been the atmosphere, the ability of the fans to carry the team across the line. I mean, our last 4 home games have been those 3 I mentioned in the Coventry playoff. So we're on a real hot streak at home where just the atmosphere and the occasion and everything has meant something. And I think this will be the same. So for me, we beat Wolves. Chelsea away, I don't think we get anything there, if I'm honest. I know you said that the streaky ant, but I don't know. I've just got a bad feeling about Chelsea. I think that'll be one of them ones where, a bit like Man United, where maybe, they're not in great form, but I just think we'll struggle there. And that's, it's not a horrendous result, is it? Nah, if you can beat Wolves, you're still happy with having 3 points. Everton at home, again, the return of David Moyes, and they look okay, but mainly at their ground, don't they, Everton? They've had a good start in that new stadium. Beat Palace, ended Palace's massive streak of undefeated streak, and they play Man City this weekend away. And Man City, I mean, let's hope that they're just still having nightmares about Erling Haaland after that one. But Everton, annoyingly, David Moyes has made them pretty solid, hasn't he? So a point would be a good result there. So I'm going with maybe 4 points there. And then who was the last game again?
Arsenal.
Sorry,
Arsenal's home.
We'll get nothing there, I don't think. So I'll say 4. But 4 points from 4 games is a good return. Yeah. So if we can do that, it's a point a game. It keeps us well above that sort of threshold. We'll still be in a really healthy position. And I don't think people will be too disappointed if that's the case. I think
Bomber will do think those people all 4. They're all 4.
Well, we all want to win all of them.
We need to caveat this. That I mean, I'm not expecting to go into every game and win.
I get you.
I'm saying we should treat each game as if we need the points.
We've got you on tape saying they're all must-wins.
That wasn't me. That was my twin.
It was Bomber Van Arnold.
Granit Xhaka said it the other week, didn't he? When he said, we go to win every game. That's and Mukiele said it after the was it Brentford at home? He or Villa, I can't remember. We go to win every game. So whether it's Arsenal or Everton, it doesn't matter. We have to try and have that mentality. But for me, as long as we are on or above a point a game this season, we've had a good season, and that 4 points from four games would be absolutely fine. The big one is Wolves, because if we don't beat Wolves at the weekend, you may be looking at the rest of them and going, "Oh, that was an opportunity." Yeah. A bit like we maybe felt after Burnley, where I can sit back now and say, actually, I understand why we got beat off Burnley. That was their big game, return to the Premier League, hadn't played at home yet. But after that, I think we all had that kind of same feeling, like, it's a missed opportunity. I think if we don't beat Wolves, it's a missed opportunity. As good as some of their players are, the bottom of the table for a reason. They haven't had a good start, and we've just got to pile that misery on. And I think we will. I think regardless of who's missing for us, we've got a really good, strong core in that team now, and they've got real belief in their ability. And when they've got a full stadium behind them, it makes all the difference. So I'm really confident ahead of Wolves. Let's just hope we get the result we need.
The reality is, and look, we'll talk about it more as the week progresses, as we build up to the game. But the reality is, if we're going to stay up, we'll probably have to finish above a team like Wolves. So we need to beat them at home. And I agree with you. 4 points is what I'd written down as being a total I'd be content with out of those 4 games. I think any lower than that, we'd probably let ourselves down a little bit. Any more than that, we're probably over-exceeding what we maybe expect, Bomber.
You look at them 3, they're in the bottom 3 at the minute, Martin, and I don't think they're going to get more points than us in the next 4 games.
I've
said it now, we're probably
we'll
get none in there.
Now you've completely scuppered it, haven't you?
The interesting thing about Saturday is we're going into that game probably for the first time this season as heavy favourites. In probably in the bookies and in our minds as well, that this is the one game where you look at all the what's happened, all what's happened in the season and everything like that, you could probably give excuses for the Villa game because Villa's still and you've seen what's happened since Villa played us. Villa have started to playing very, very well, and beating some teams in that they absolutely dismantled Fulham in the second half. This is probably the one you're looking at where we're heavy favourites to win, and it puts that extra pressure on us to put a performance in to get the 3 points. So it would be interesting to see how the players and the fans as well react to that, because the fans, I think, this season have been excellent, especially at home, where we haven't been. We have been under the pump a little bit, especially in the Villa game when we're down to 10. We've got to remember as well, Saturday coming, it's not going to be we're going out and blasting these away 2 or 3-0 early on. It's not going to happen, and the fans have just got to be patient and just remember what we've done this season so far has been getting them goals late, or letting teams come on to us and really get behind the players as well this weekend, because it is going to be a tough one, even though they're bottom of the league.
It is indeed. Bomber, the next 4 games, I know we've joked that they're all must-wins, but how many points would you be content with out of those? Just to give us a full
I think
house.
I'd be content. I think I'd be content with 4. I wouldn't disagree with you. But it's all like I said, it's all on the caveat that you beat Wolves, because that's 3, and then I think we're all on the same page in terms of possibly 0 from Chelsea, 1 from Everton, 0 from Arsenal. But that looks very different if you only get 1 or you get beat off of Wolves. So yeah, I would be content with 4 if we can come away from that run of games and only losing 1 of them. So I'm thinking maybe the optimist in me is thinking maybe beat Wolves, scrape a draw against Chelsea, draw against Everton, and get beat off Arsenal. I think if we can go that run of games thinking we've only lost 1, I think we should be quite pleased with that. And yeah, like Gav said as well, if you're averaging just over a point a game, you get to your 40-point mark that I mentioned earlier. By the end of the season, it's a nervy season. Don't get me wrong. If you're averaging a point a game, but yeah, I think my gut's telling me 4, and then anything more than that, I'll be happy with.
It's going to be interesting, isn't it? So you look at the points total out of that little run of games, and we've all agreed, 4 points, or Ant's gone 5 to 7, but 4 points is good. But the
I'm
4
always an
points,
optimist, though, Martin.
this is right. Nobody can fault you for that. But the irony is, the 4 points, or a 4 points total that included beating Wolves, is a better 4 points total than the one that beat Arsenal, because we need to take points off teams like Wolves as well. So I know it's an early in the season game, and it's not a must-win, but it's a very, very, very important game on Saturday, I feel. We've got
there is an argument to be made, Mark. Sorry, there is an argument to be made that we're perhaps, like Gav suggested, we're maybe giving Everton a bit too much credit away from home. Like, why are we expecting necessarily to draw against Everton when we've already beaten Brentford and West Ham, and taken points off of Villa? Everton aren't necessarily any better or worse than them. Yeah, Moyes has got them pretty solid, but they've been a lot better home than away. So there is probably an argument to say, well, why are we so negative? Not negative, but not as optimistic on the Everton game, given our track record at home. But yeah, I'd still stick with it. But it was just a thought that popped into my head.
It's absolutely right. And look, we love a bit of optimism on Haway The Podcast, so we can up that points total if we want. We have got a couple of random little questions to finish off with, and very short answers. I'm going to give each of you a chance to give a very short answer to both of these. So Rob Lowe at Rob Lowe 23 says, is Robin Roofs on the way to becoming a Van der Sar regen? Gav, yes or no?
I think he's better than Van der Sar, so we'll go possibly.
Bomber?
Potential, yes, definitely.
And?
Yeah, 100%.
Even looks like one of us got off the fence.
You're not going to get much disagreement on that. He's been incredibly impressive so far this season, and if that is a sign of what is to come and he can improve, he is an exceptionally good goalkeeper. Rob Hutchison at Rob H SAFC says, should KLD look to increase the stadium-like capacity if we stay up this season? Bomber, bigger stands, more people in. You're going to have a bit of time with the roof off and stuff like that we had back in the early 2000s. But is that a reality, a possibility, or is it pie in the sky?
Gives me more chance to get a home ticket, mate. So yeah, I'm all for it.
And
yeah,
all through Christmas.
Isn't there already rumblings that they're going to be doing that anyway? On about extending the south stand.
Well, I think they've always had plans in place. They've always, when Bob Murray oversaw the construction of the stadium back in the day, it was all built so the east stand and north and south stand could be lifted up.
Yes.
The roof could be lifted up so you could actually replicate what's on what is now the Jimmy Montgomery stand. I think it's come to have the press interest because of the work that's taken place at Sheepfolds, hasn't it? And the council plans and all that sort of stuff, which had proposed buildings right up to the south stand as it currently is, which would then prevent any expansion on the south stand. So I think that's why it's sort of been talked about a little bit more. And they've had plans drawn because they've got to have planning permission in to kind of have those conversations and all that sort of stuff. But it's an intriguing possibility. I think the ground would look fantastic if you could build the south stand and east stand to the same height as what the north and the Jimmy Montgomery stand are. But Gav, can you see that happening anytime soon?
No, I can't.
You can't?
When we're talking soon, I mean, the guy in the question, did he say end of the season? Like
if we stay up.
Yeah, so, I mean, if we stay up, no. I don't. Not immediately. I think it's certainly got to be part of the... We talked about this, was it last week when Kelvin asked about the 5-year plan? I think it's got to be in the 5 to 10 year plan for the club that we do look at extending the stadium, but that would have to come after a period of success, I think. So when I say a success, we have to be able to sustain those crowds that we're having at the minute. So we stay in the Premier League, we maybe compete for cups, maybe even win a cup. That would be amazing. But if Sunderland get into Europe and maybe do it once or twice over the next 5 to 6 years, which would be an unbelievable achievement, then there would be a real case to extend the stadium. But off the back of 3 home games in the Premier League that we've sold out, I'm not so sure. So I'm going to be the slightly less carried away one on this one. I think it's got to be looked at eventually, though. But you've got to remember how many times we've actually sold that stadium out. And it's been because the team's been crap on the pitch for the most part. You know what I mean? We've got a good team now and we've got a really well-run football club, so people want to be there. There's a bit of a waiting list for season tickets, and people like yourself, Bomber, are really struggling to get tickets for home games and things like that. The success creates demand, and at the minute there's demand, but we've got to be able to sustain that. And there's got to be, when they look back at it, they've got to be able to go, oh yeah, well, for the last 3 or 4 seasons, we've sold out nearly every home game. We can see why there would be merit in doing this. But I think there are probably other things they need to focus on, and that would be keeping us in the Premier League and then going again next season and then going again the season after that. Because if you do something like a stand extension, it costs money. That money's got to come from somewhere, and it's probably going to impact upon a playing budget. And if all of a sudden we're not signing 25, 30 million pound players because we're building a stand, people might not be too keen on the idea. So yes, I think it's part of the plan, just not immediately.
Right, and I think that is a very good place to wrap things up for today. So thank you to Gav, thank you, Bomber, and thanks to Ant. And once again, thank you to everybody who has sent in questions for this week's Q&A episode. I think they're now a regular part of our weekly lineup, aren't they, Gav? So if
they are indeed.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So yes,
we're enjoying these. If we'll be back probably this time next week to do it again. So I put the post out on X, and I said Twitter, same thing. I put that out on Sunday night. I might do it straight after the game. I don't know. I haven't decided if that's going to be sort of a regular slot, but people just have to check out our social media to find the post for it. But as you mentioned earlier, if people just want to email them to us, they can. That's rotareport@yahoo.co.uk. And you can do that from any point now. I'll store them away and we'll make sure that you get your question answered next week.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some things that we've talked about here that you disagree with, or it's maybe provoked another question or a follow-up question. Or you might want to ask us something completely different. So yes, please send us a message on X.
Just don't ask us to pronounce names of people, because as we've proven repeatedly, we're shocking at it.
Well, maybe that's the only way we'll get better, Gav. So there's probably some benefit into it. But yes,
Duolingo do a program for podcasters who can't say football names? Because I think that's probably what we need. We need an app.
Maybe we should get a sponsorship with Duolingo.
Yeah. This is how you don't do it.
Don't listen to Haway The Podcast. Use Duolingo instead. But anyway, yes, as Gav says, you can email us your questions and also look out for the call out on social media next week. But we'll be back tomorrow with another episode of Haway The Podcast. And until then, it's goodbye from all of us.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Sports Social Podcast Network, the biggest voices in sport. Let's take a look at some of the lineup. Tops and tails.
And he goes, all right, mate, do you want the darts and thing? And I'm like, what darts?
The Anfield Wrap.
Off the field, Liverpool have done everything they possibly could to achieve dominance now.
The Analyst Inside Cricket.
It was announced over the PA system that I was out of the test for injury. A massive cheer went up around the ground. Probably the biggest cheer I've got in the UK.
All on Europe's biggest sport podcast network. Find your next favourite sport podcast. Search Sports Social Podcast Network and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Verified comparison at content.sport-social.co.uk/comparison.